Oh, there we go. That's the reason. That's that is the pieces underneath that that the signals just go back into it. So stage. Yes, normally we can see it on this screen, that's and that screen. This is very yeah. But it's cursed. We wrote out the way. That reason, it says it should stick with us. Yes. Yeah, I'm very obvious. This is going to be on. But
All right. We're just going to get started, and if the problems with the tech resolve themselves, then so be it. That'd be great. But otherwise, we can manage with what we have. I'll just wait for Nor to come back, though. Cool. We'll be recording in the stream. Oh yeah, recording. All right. And Max, flick us to cool. All right, I'll open the meeting at 6:14 p.m. I'll start with an acknowledgement of the traditional owners. The Curtin Student Guild pays our respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander members of our community by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which the Bentley campus is located, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and on our Kalgoorlie campus, the Wangutha people of the Northeastern Goldfields. We acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contribution they make to the life of this university, city, and this region. Members present, we have Dylan, Nor, Ben, Bridget, Razan, Max, myself, Callum, Hamida, Emily, David, Ebony, and Hadia. We have an apology from Coben. Others present, we have Vernon, Julie, Edward, Priscilla, and Ella. I will note that since the last meeting, Ryan has resigned, which is why I am sitting up here instead of along the well like the rest of you. And we should have a new chair by next meeting because the nominations for that close tomorrow. All right, I'll move on to item 3. I'll move on to item 3, disclosure of any potential or perceived conflicts of interest. Does anyone have anything to disclose for any of the items? Nope. All right, I'll move on to item 4.1, previous meeting minutes. Does anyone have anything to discuss about the minutes from last meeting? Is everyone happy with them? No amendments? Cool. All right, I have a motion that the Guild Council approve the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 26th of June 2025 as a true and accurate record of proceedings at that meeting. This is moved by Nor. Can I get a seconder? Ben. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Item 5 is reports. Dylan, your report and KPIs were submitted. Do you have anything you would like to add?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. First of all, I think worthwhile just recognising the contributions that Ryan has made in the past to this guild. First as a faculty representative, Faculty of Business and Law, and then also as a guild councillor and chair of this guild council for a year and a half. It can be, many people say being chair of guild council is one of the toughest jobs in politics. I don't say that, but some people have. And on behalf of the executive, and I hope on behalf of the council, I wish to thank Ryan for his service to the Guild, his service to students, and wish him well in his endeavours, fighting the good fight as a consultant for one of the Big Four. I will move on to my summary for my report. In this period, I travelled to the NUS Education Conference in Canberra. While there, presented on the Northwest Shelf, climate change, made the case for a national student housing campaign, and also took part in the welfare plenary and spoke pretty frankly about the state of the NUS. Deeply proud to be quoted in the Honi Soit, where I called out the failure to publish a national policy platform for 7 months. That's now 8. Now since NatCon, it is clear that the NUS has a long way to go. It's important to underline that the Guild believes in the potential of the NUS and needs to remain committed to holding it to account. They will send us a bill at some point soon for a large amount of money. And my preliminary reading of the KPIs that we set much earlier on in the year indicate that that will be looked upon quite harshly this year. We're working with Make Renting Fair WA and Circle Green Community Legal on a student housing survey to ensure that our advocacy in this area will be shaped by students' lived experience. I'm quite angry at the lack of commitment from the university or uni lodge on this front at the moment, and it signals that we are going to need to ramp up in semester 2 to get this point across. The Guild is not going to sit by and just sort of accept that this is too hard to fix. We're certainly not going to sit by and just accept as fact that any improvements to the security or welfare of students living in on-campus housing will result in a rent rise. That, quite frankly, is quite offensive. I would caution anyone in the university against using that language in the future because it will be dealt with pretty swiftly by myself and the other areas of the Guild. We're not going to accept that. So any suggestion that an improvement would have to come with rent increases are quite shameful, and it's something that needs to be called out. And I'm going to call it out here, and I will be calling it out at the next academic board meeting, along with in future communications on this front. We have developed a proposal which has been endorsed by the Vice-Chancellor and the DVCA to launch a Guild food pantry on campus with funding from the university and supplemented by donations. The model will see a food pantry accessible for students via the Guild reception at select times. Each student will be able to visit the pantry up to 2 times a semester, being prompted on the second occasion to book an appointment with Student Assist for referral to Food Bank. We are advocating that the university expand the Food for Fines scheme to stock the pantry long term. Further to this, as part of the work that that's sort of in general part of the work that we're doing on the parking front as well. You would have noticed is we advocated for and we're able to get the university to open up new overflow parking as well, which should ease some of the pressure, but it's certainly not going to result in the big changes that we want in the parking front, and that's something that we're going to continue to have to push on moving forward. Very happy to let council know, and thanks a lot to Vernon for his diligence on this front. The student kitchen is open. It's been delivered. So thank you very much. It's a great piece of infrastructure. I know it will be used by thousands of students for many years to come. And it's an important step in towards making sure campus is accessible and welcoming for all. Stage 2 of the Clubs Hub work has commenced on that. We'll be discussing the strategic plan and commercial portfolio later in this meeting, and also happy to report that Guinness is now on tap at the tavern, which has replaced the Tui's old tap. Anecdotal reports from the bar staff indicate that it is doing better than the old offering. I'm looking forward to seeing sales figures. I have furnished myself with a Guinness on the odd occasion in the tavern now that it's there, but have also seen other people doing so, which is wonderful. Something that I just wanted to call out is to the Guild's Clubs team with Clubs officers Luke Shelley and Manager of Student Engagement Beck. Club events are at an all-time high on campus. We've got over 100 clubs registered or in the process of registration. It's putting a lot of work to that team, but they really do achieve a lot for the Guild and students. We saw all the clubs out there at O-Day as well, so it was fantastic to see everyone out there. And yeah, the clubs team do a lot of work for the Guild, and they certainly deserve to be called out for that as well. My key KPIs are up there at the moment. Very happy with where we're going at the moment. Most things are either completed or met thus far. A couple of areas that need to have improvement on over the next sort of period going towards the end of the term. I'm happy to take any questions on the report or KPIs.
Thank you, Dylan. Are there any questions for Dylan? Yes, Emily.
Yeah, I guess something that I don't think made the report, but I assume would has taken a lot of your time, Dylan, would be campaigning for NLE. Did you not? Yeah, and I think that, it is a real mistake and kind of an issue that the president of a student union, of this student union, campaigns for the Labor Party, given their role in a bunch of things, particularly, the genocide in Gaza, the repression of anti-war activists. I think, just in the past few days, what have the Labor Party spent their time doing while the starvation in Gaza is happening? It's been to discipline one of the only people to stand against it, Maroon Faruqi, shamefully. And yeah, I think, talking about public housing and the kind of housing crisis for students, I think a bunch of the reasons the kind of students can't afford housing is because, of the demolishment of public housing, of the kind of, no regulations on what landlords can charge for rents, and all of this is under the Labor Party. So I think it's a real issue and a real kind of, I guess, barrier to how kind of politically clear this body can be when the person at the head of it is campaigning for the government and the party that is responsible for the oppression of many people, including workers and students in this country and in this state, really.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm happy to take that more as a comment. I think what I do in my personal time is something. I mean, the Guild has always stood up and stood against policies from any major party. In terms of why it wasn't included in the report, generally, this is a report from the 20th of the 6th, 2025 to the 17th of the 7th, 2025. The federal election was a long time ago. You can check Wikipedia for information on how that went. I don't think Purple Pingers was elected, unfortunately. But look, I mean, ultimately, the Guild will always stand on what it believes, and that will always be the case. I think it's a cheap shot to come in here and try and raise that. I know Guild elections are around the corner. I think we can be bigger than that. I think we can be a bit more mature than that. So yeah, look, happy to take it on advisement. I know that that's your position. You've made that abundantly clear. I'm not going to see you out there in a red shirt. But look, that's a choice for you to make.
Any other questions for Dylan? Ebony.
Thanks, Dylan. Thank you for your report. I really appreciate the work you've been doing on the housing campaign. I did just want to raise a concern about the temperature data in student housing. As far as I'm aware, monitors were distributed, but we haven't received a report outlining those findings yet. And I'd really appreciate an update of where that's at and when we can expect to see the data.
Yep. They were distributed. But I think that sort of more so sits with Ben was putting together the report. I don't know if Ben wanted to take that.
Yep, Ben.
I've still got the report, still working on it. Recently with the assessments, feedback, and other ASPM reviews, I've had to put that on hold, but it is pretty much done, and I'm happy to share that to you and let you know, see what you think, and see if it's worth publishing.
Cool, thanks. Any other questions? Emily?
Yeah, I think that, I've raised the campaign for Labor Party not to be a cheap shot, Dylan, but because I think this body needs to take an oppositional stance to the people that are responsible for the kind of housing crisis, for the genocide in Gaza, for, the cost of living crisis in this country. And I think the student union should actually be oppositional, not only to uni management, but to the kind of government, Labor, Liberal, whatever. And at this current point in time, it's the Labor Party. And I think, we've seen that they've come in with this mandate that they bang on and on about. And what they've done with the mandate is to continue to send, kind of parts of weapons come out recently to Israel and deny that and sanction people that stand up against that. So it's not a cheap shot. It's to say that this student union should be clear on what the Labor Party is, and that's a party of oppression. That's a party of screwing over working class people, screwing over students, and they are enemies. And I think that you can't be politically clear on that if you spend your time trying to fight for them to make government. So yeah, it's kind of like a thing that I think prompts a proper response, not just a kind of scoff, to be honest. So I would like to hear, you justify that, because I think, it's not just something you can do in your personal capacity, because, you are the president of the student union. And I think it sends a signal that there's no red line that the Labor Party can cross to kind of withdraw not only your vote, but your, going out and campaigning to convince other people this is a party that they should vote for and they should put first.
All right, Dylan.
I'm not going to spend time here justifying my personal political opinions. I do think it's a cheap shot. I know that the student elections are around the corner, and I know that this is the argument that you will run on. If you want to talk about the mandate of the Labor Party, I don't know what your mandate sitting here is either. You want to talk about the mandate that we have to run the guild in the way that we see fit? That's the mandate that we have here as well. And we're going to make the decisions on behalf of the students. We're going to make decisions.
I'll remind them, you have to wait to be called. Let Dylan finish.
We're going to make decisions in the best interests of students as a guild, and I will make decisions in the best interests of where I believe people should make their political decisions. I voted for a range of parties over the past area. I believe that at the last election, that was a decision worth having. I've worked very closely with that Member of Parliament on a number of issues. Yeah, sure, by all means, go ahead. I don't know what you've achieved other than screaming at people. If you want to have that, that's fine. You can do that. If that's your model of political action, all power to you. I've got a different approach. I was elected on that approach. There are two areas here. One is my capacity at the Guild. One is my capacity as a citizen of this country. I can act in those capacities in a way that is consistent. And that's how I've acted. Thank you.
Any other questions for Dylan? Max?
Yes, speaking to the bit in your report about clubs and the clubs team, I've noticed that since swapping the guilds, the club's barbecue provider to the Sizzler provider, when booking for my club's upcoming barbecue, I've noticed that the function packs and the costing points for that has not been changed to reflect any changes in pricing with switching to a new provider. Is there any comments or updates on that?
Yeah, thanks. I followed up with the clubs team just earlier this week on that to give an update to council. The provider for our barbecue packs changed, and that effectively brought the cost down. The booking part where that worked wasn't updated. That has been updated, and any club that's had a barbecue since then will be reimbursed those points for basically the extra points. So that's effectively from the start of this semester. Yeah.
Any other questions for Dylan? Not seeing anyone. We'll move on to 5.2, the VPE report. Your report was submitted and your KPIs were circulated. Wait,
Yes, I'm happy to speak to something that wasn't necessarily in my report, but was about the push for consistent times in assessment submissions. We're pushing for 11:59 p.m. for all electronic submissions. On O-Day, my store was dedicated to that, and I was running still am running, but running a survey where we've gotten over 350 responses, and currently it's only looking like 5% of students are against that. So I'd like to think we're not out of touch, and what we're pushing for does make meaningful change for students and what they want. I'm happy to take the rest of my report as written and answer any questions.
thanks. Any questions for Ben? Ebony?
Thanks, Ben. I just wanted to ask a quick question for clarification. In your report, you mentioned you've been receiving constant communication regarding faculty rep members, and I noticed there haven't been any meetings with health sciences rep or the postgraduate rep. I just wanted to hope you could provide a bit more insight into what's been happening in those areas and whether there've been any changes in connecting with those reps.
I'm happy to comment on this. For my meetings with the health science rep, I'd like to state first that all of my meetings with my reps aren't always reflected in my report, as sometimes it may just be a quick conversation, updating about one another's meetings, how it helps each other. This isn't the case with health sciences, and as reflected also in my KPIs, that this is concerning. Only 3 out of 4 of that is I'm still not meeting my KPI on that. That's something I want to improve on. I am planning to meet with Rabab and set up a consistent meeting schedule, which I have been trying to do for the whole year. As for the President Mitch, our chats are very much impromptu, and I'm happy to have a conversation with Mitch as if this needs to be consistent, and I'll reflect that in my report. I'm happy to let you comment on that, Mitch, if you'd like.
I mean, I've been around for a while, and when I think something's important, I just tell Ben things. Yeah. Any other questions for Ben? No? All right, we'll move on to 5.3, Vice President Activities Report. Bridget, your report and KPIs were submitted. Do you have anything you would like to add?
I'd like to quickly add, yesterday was O-Day and it was very successful. We were very lucky for the weather, with it being shiny for the whole of the duration of O-Day, which was amazing. My KPIs are being met with the accessibility matrix being rolled out. It's been hard launched. It's finally been put on the social media. The Lorien had it at had flyers on it at their stall at O-Day. It's been an undertaking for the past year. I would like to thank Lorien, our current accessibility officer, Feliz, our previous accessibility officer, the club's team, and Jackie, the previous VPSW and previous VPA, for their continuous hard work for the past year and a half to delivering this. This will give vital information to some students on whether or not an event is for them, because I was talking to Carla and she said for every year people have come to her saying, hey, this event, I wish I had more information about it, because you guys have been to O-Day, it's a sensory overload, it's crowded, it's noisy. Some people don't know that. This is a great resource for them. And you have probably seen on the Guild website and also on our posters that there's a little symbol on it. This is a ranking on how high sensory to low sensory a event is. I'm very glad that this has finally been done. And yeah, I'm happy to take my report as read and answer any questions.
All right, thanks, Bridget. Are there any questions for Bridget? Not seeing any. We'll move to item 5.4, the VPSW report. Razan, your report and KPIs were submitted. Is there anything you would like to add?
I am happy to be at 80% complete. Sorry. With regards to my KPIs, which was definitely a team effort as well. This includes establishing the Ethnocultural Collective to advocate for better dietary options that cater to vegetarian and halal options, which manifested in more dietary options on the lolly wall, for example, to introduce Welfare Week on campus, to advocate for better mental health on campus, and more. From the last meeting to this one, I've been working with fellow unions, societies, and NGOs on the Australian Human Rights Commission's Racism at Uni study. Um, to be completely transparent, I did have an array of concerns, and that was also expressed across the board. And I'm happy that the Commission is working to mitigate them. But ultimately, this will be rolled out soon, and I'm hoping that this will better welfare and safety outcomes for students. The student charter, which the Guild played a major role in writing, has been emailed to students, and I'm happy with how it's turned out, and happy to answer any questions at all.
Thanks, Razan. Are there any questions for Razan? Ebony.
I just wanted to ask for a bit more context about how things are progressing in your portfolio, particularly regarding the 2 additional multi-faith spaces. I understand Jeanette is currently on maternity leave, but I'm curious about the timing. Was there a reason that this didn't progress earlier, given that you knew that she might have been on leave? I also noticed that there haven't been any meetings recorded with the International Students Rep, and if you could clarify why that's been happening in that space as well.
Thank you, Ebony. So firstly, I found that Janet would be taking maternity leave 3 months in, which would be like March-ish. Um, I originally planned for that to be left in semester 2 because I thought it would take more time. Um, Multi-faith has taken a while to get back to me. I've now found the point of contact, who's the head of psychological services. So I will be working with him and properties. Um, but yeah, so that one, and I know it would have taken more energy because naturally how properties operate. So that's why I dedicated it to semester 2 and tried to get all my KPIs out of the way in semester 1. The second question was regarding the International Students Committee president. To be completely transparent, I did have difficulty in the beginning setting up these regular meetings with the ISC president. They were overseas for a while and took a bit of time for them to get used to the role. So by the time the semester had begun and gotten halfway through, I didn't have those regular meetings with them, which I was having with other equity reps. Communicated that to the president, and the ISC president has communicated that they will be more, I guess they're more committed now that they've settled in the role. They understand the scope of it. And so uh, I've sent out communications to all the reps for asking for new sort of availabilities given semester 2, and we'll definitely be having those meetings with him during this semester.
Razan, any other questions for Razan? Ebony.
I say thank you for completing so many of your KPIs as well. I think you've done a really great job.
Thank you, Ebony.
All right. Any other questions for Razan? Not seeing any, we'll move on to the secretary. Your report and KPIs were submitted. Do you have anything to add?
No, I take my report as read. I was on leave for a lot of it, and then I was unwell, so for majority of this reporting period, I actually wasn't here. But when I went to my meetings, attended NUS, EdCon. Yeah, and as for my KPIs, they're tracking well. A lot of my KPIs are more just continuing on with the administrative, like payments, report submissions, things like that. And longer term tasks like the policy book and the secretary guide are ongoing. Yeah. Other than that, happy to take questions.
Thanks, Noor. Are there any questions for Noor? Not seeing any, we'll move on to Vernon's report. Vernon, your report was submitted. Do you have anything to add?
No, thanks, Mitch. No, nothing further to add, but in reference to
Dylan's earlier comments. I thank him for them and thank all the students and this council for their patience with respect to the Student Kitchenette project. And I'm very happy it's open now. And I'll take the paper as read, welcome any questions, but thank my portfolio managers who contribute greatly to this report, and they're identified in the report also. I'm so happy to take questions.
Thanks, Vernon. Are there any questions for Vernon? David?
Yeah, I just had a question regarding the Guinness jersey and keyring promotion.
Yes.
I was just wondering, was that something that the guild that you actively sought out, or was that sort of something that was promoted to you? Just what's more?
Yeah, no, my understanding is once we had made the inquiries as to being able to bring that in on tap, it was a promotion that they were happy to add as part of that. And I think it might even be broader and beyond just Curtin having a promotion.
Thanks. Any other questions for Vernon? All right, I've got one. I have noticed that the social media for the TAV has been particularly quiet, and also the number of posts during O Week from the main guild page was particularly light on. Is there a reason for this?
Hi, Mitch. Yeah, thanks for that question. Yeah, there is, and it's one that's ongoing and linked to a number of the strategic projects. Currently in our student engagement team, we have some resourcing issues that we have to deal with, and that area of the business is part of a strategic review that will include, it's part of the organisational review. It's been identified we need more resources. Currently, with the recent movements in that, because of the ongoing strategic review of this area, we haven't replaced staff leaving with permanent appointments. So we're working with a very young member of the team that's been recently appointed and a temp whom is moving on next Friday also, and we're sourcing another temp. The manager currently is working on reduced hours due to personal needs and commitments. We acknowledge and thank everyone for their patience in this area. We see it as a very important and valuable area of what the guild does, and we're actually engaged a consultant who we will meet with on the 28th to review our whole delivery and structure of that, which is an independent expert, nationally based, that can just advise us on the type of resources, the capacity we need based on the understanding of our expectations, and that will cover digital, that'll cover design, that will cover website, that will cover social media, and we're going to take that advice when coming to this council later to present an organisational review and recommendations. And this area and IT will be key areas we need to review and invest in.
Thanks, Ben. Any other questions before we move to the safety report? Ebony?
This is more of a comment just for all of exec, if that's okay, Chair.
Yep, sure.
I just wanted to ask if in future with reports, if we could have a bit more information in them. In quite a couple of the exec reports, there were like things like no comments when it come to meeting and they were left blank. And a few of the reports were quite brief. If we could just have a bit more information in future.
Thanks, Ebony. All right. Vernon?
Could I just add for this council's information that moving forward, we will be separating out the finance report from the managing director's report. So it's a standalone report. I do identify due to the fact that we have a very small finance team with one accountant who was on long service leave recently, and that shows the exposure of there wasn't capacity to provide the June report. So we will be providing the June and the July report at the next meeting, and we're looking to redesign the report to have dashboards that will give very clear high-level information to this council without having to read full income statements and details. I just thought I'd share that.
Thanks, Vernon. All right, we've got a motion that the Guild Council approves the reports, moved by Noor. Can I get a seconder? Max. All right, all those in favour? That is carried. All right. Oh, and then we have another motion. that the Guild Council approves the submitted KPI mid-year reviews. That is moved by Nor. Can I get a seconder? Ebony. All those in favour? That is carried. Item 6, business or notice. We have 6.1, the safety report. We have a motion that the Guild notes the safety report. That is moved by Nor. Can I get a seconder? Ben. All right. Any discussion on the safety report? Start with you.
Just key points in it is ongoing building maintenance, mostly in central and the kitchen, which have been reported to Curtin and they're being monitored and resolved. A few of the items are closed, like the dust down requirement in B104 and the open blade packaging issue in the kitchens. There were 2 injury reports this month, and the Health and Safety Committee was postponed. Will meet on the 30th of July. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, and the June inspection reports were not fully submitted. Which question to you? Is that related to the? Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. It's related to absences. And I'm working with the health and safety officer and the portfolio management team to consider how we manage that moving forward from a planning point of view. So hopefully absences won't result in audit review.
I'll ask council to please take their seats so that we can get started again.
How are you aware of Susan Bell? Obviously, I'm giving information leaked to you. Oh, Luke told me. Of course. I mean,
All right. So I will reopen the meeting at, yep, 6:56 p.m. If we good on the stream, Max? Yep, cool. Okay. Cool. Where are we up to? We're in the middle of the safety report. Is there anything else on the safety report? David?
yeah, Bernard, I just wanted to ask a question about the workers' compensation claims. I'm not sure whether I'm reading this wrong or not. When it says 2,269.45 hours of compensation claims for June, does that mean that that number of hours has been claimed just for the month of June, or does that mean over the last 12 months?
Yeah, that's correct. That's an aggregate over the last 12 months.
Thanks. Anything else for the safety report? Seeing anything? We'll go back to the motion. Did I already have a seconder for this or not? All right, cool. We have a motion that the Guild Council notes the safety report. That's moved by Noor. Can I please get a seconder? Ebony. Oh, actually, sorry, Ben already seconded it earlier. We'll go back. Ben seconding it. All those in favour? That is carried. Move on to item 6.2, the Guild Strategic Plan Consultation Draft. We have, the motion is that the Guild Council discusses and notes the Guild the Curtin Student Guild 2026 to 2029 Strategic Plan Consultation Draft. This is moved by Dylan and seconded by Noor. Dylan, do you want to kick us off?
Yep. So earlier this year, we adopted a timeline on a strategic plan adoption. Part of that timeline was that the draft would come to this Guild Council for any final feedback and thoughts, and then it would come back to the August meeting for full approval before it is implemented. There it is. I mean, it's right there in front of you. We have proposed mission, which is to enrich the student experience through a strong student voice and inclusive services while fostering a vibrant and fun community. The proposed vision is to be the leading and most trusted independent student-run organisation in Australia that is highly valued by our students, the broader sector and community. And then we've got proposed values for autonomy, equity, accountability, community and sustainability in there as well. We've got some pillars, like it's got everything you want out of a good strategic plan. A lot of work's gone into this in consultation with the exec, with reps, with working myself with Vernon and David Price from Elevate Consulting, working on this as well. So yeah, I mean, happy to take any general thoughts, feedback, queries, advice from council, but yeah.
Thanks, Dylan. Emily?
Yeah.
Sorry, Nora's second. I wanted to go next.
Yeah, basically everything Dylan just said, but also following this meeting, if this does pass, the execs and Vernon and David Price will have, I think, a final meeting, and then we'll bring it back to August Guild Council for adoption. So if you do have any input, please say so. Anything. Yeah.
All right, Emily?
Yeah, I guess just a few issues I take with the Guild Strategic Plan draft. I think a bunch of it is like pretty full of corporate speak, and just from reading a bunch of it, you wouldn't be able to tell a union produced it. It could have been produced by any sort of body, corporate or otherwise. So I think that yeah, it kind of reflects that yeah, something that I think is oftentimes missing from this body. That it should actually be a student union that fights for students' rights. And I think, yeah, the kind of lack of speaking about repression, there's this whole kind of wave of repression against student activism, particularly around the genocide in Gaza. Yeah, I think in the context of that, of kind of cracking down on free speech and a bunch of other really important issues, I think, yeah, it kind of doesn't really talk about repression or protecting democratic rights. And yeah, I think there's a bunch of other issues too. Like, I think there's one line that says that the student guild should have a respectable engagement with management, and the whole section on the university, I think, is titled University Partnership and Student Voice, which I think is a real problem because, yeah, I think that like we shouldn't have kind of bound ourselves to a respectful engagement with the university, because what does that mean? Does that mean we can't protest them? Does it mean we can't be oppositional? Does that mean we have to be polite? And I think, yeah, it's a real mistake viewing the university as partners, like equal partners in a partnership. What I think really more the dynamic is that they are the ones that constantly want to push staff conditions down, learning conditions down, want to attack the right for free speech and activism on campus, and kind of want to attack staff's conditions, not accept any of their kind of pleas and negotiations, which are currently happening. And so I think, yeah, we should more see them as enemies that we should oppose, not people we should politely engage in partnership with, and kind of, echo the words that can be read in the pages of the Curtin University Charter, which I think is what is happening in kind of this strategic plan, really.
Thanks, Emily. Dylan or Noor, did you want to respond?
I'd just say that to have a good, efficient strategic plan, we need to cover all bases. So there is going to have to be something in a section with university. And I hear what you're saying, but the ensuring respectful engagement with university leadership without compromising our independence and responsibility to members, regardless of what we're doing, we are a part of SAF committee, SAFIAC. We're a part of the academic board. We're sitting on a lot of like boards where we are interacting with university staff. So regardless, we're going to have to be in those rooms. So we need key objectives that guide us when we're in those rooms. I want to know if you have, what would you change it to? What would you add if, yeah. Yeah.
Amita?
I think like, you know, it should definitely have a bit more about like defending free speech, about like, you know, shielding students from any possible repression. And, you know, another thing with it is like that it says it supports grassroots activism, which like, you know, just from the beginning of this semester, you know, just um clubs not being able to promote any non you know non-official club affiliated event or whatever. It's just like how is that going to support grassroots activity if there isn't even any possibility, like it's limiting you know, like that is just like limiting campaigns. Like campaigns should be able to you know, establish itself, and like the guild should be backing it, not like limiting that. Like because due to the club stuff, all we've seen is like personally experiencing like doing Palestine activism has just been so difficult on this campus. You know, how is the guild backing all of these grassroots campaigns? Like, you know, there's like good campaigns we hear in this meeting, but then on campus we don't really see that. It doesn't really involve students in it. Like, you know, I think it should be more about that. The housing campaign that, you know, we've previously heard about. I think that's good, and it should actually involve students in it, and that would make it grassroots. Like, um, it's about like students being involved in it. That's actually how you can win things as well. Like, and I think a really positive example of this is at ANU, like the No Cuts campaign, where there's been students protesting against all of these cuts. And the recent post I saw about it was that all of these cuts have just been like paused, and that just kind of shows that, you know, things like these campaigns can win, and grassroots campaigns have a possibility of being more successful if it's more of like, you know, the guild backing it, but also students being able to be involved and having this free space for the campaigns to be able to, you know, develop itself. And I think like this chart itself, like or whatever, you know, the whole thing, like it should talk more about all of these things. And yeah.
Thanks, Amita. So just to clarify, so would you add those points under pillar A, the members, student voice, services and engagement, or?
It doesn't matter, like it should just be in there.
All right, we'll go members first and wait for gallery to the end. So Emily?
Well, yeah, I think that like there should be objectives with in regards to management, but the objectives should be that we fight them and win. And I think that yeah, that we like putting clearly that we see them as our enemies. In kind of fighting is necessary for any kind of union that has kind of, you know, any kind of chance, I think, at winning. And yeah, the No Cuts campaign at ANU, I think, is a really good example, which mobilised 400 students to protest the kind of the cuts that are happening there, which are seeing, I think it was like 1,000 staff or something crazy, like getting jobs either lost or getting hours reduced. And that initiative, that collective on campus was able to be because members of Socialist Alternative set it up and reached out to students and said, you know, we want to fight with you on this. And I think that, you know, there should be a right for collectives that aren't guild affiliated clubs, but just if students want to form collectives to support, you know, staff on strike, to kind of support Palestine or whatever, they shouldn't have to, you know, come up not only against the university but against the student union. I think that collectives should be supported and championed by the student guild. And I think the ANU example of members of Socialist Alternative, you know, getting other people involved in fighting back is a really positive one. And I think that is what grassroots activism looks like. It looks like involving students. And I think that it's been a real error of this body that it only kind of supports campaigns that it can have control over. But I think that should be something that changes going forward. And that, you know, like if there is like a staff strike that happens, I think it would be a positive thing if there was kind of a group that was formed of students who were angry about how the university is treating staff and want to stand in solidarity, want to come down to the picket line, want to support them and rally in support. And I think that, you know, we as Socialist Alternative want to be part of that, play a role in that, want to, you know, poster, talk to students on stalls. These are things that we want to do and are capable of doing. And I think the ANU example shows that you know, you need to seriously put in leg work. And I think the student union should do that. But our club also wants to be part of that too, because we think we're capable of mobilising students around that.
Thanks, Emily. Does anyone from exec want to respond first, or we'll go to Hidea?
I just have a question. I wanted you to elaborate on when you said that this council only supports campaigns that they have control over, and I just want like a bit of examples of that.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, well, I think the example I'm thinking of is, you know, like the Students of Palestine kind of collective on this campus, which, you know, I was part of coming to a meeting here to try and get affiliated as a club last year, which was rejected by this body. And so for a lot of kind of the events, we have been like, as the part of the club I'm part of, Socialist Alternative Club, we've been helping to facilitate people who want to stand in solidarity with Palestine students, both in Socialist Alternative, but also students outside of Socialist Alternative. And we've had, you know, meetings, you know, for a long period of time, weekly meetings where, you know, like tens of students would come, many of them never involved in activism in their lives, but just see the horror in Palestine and want to do something about it. And I think that's been a real positive, that there's been a space where people can make democratic decisions, you know, like the housing campaign. I've never seen a meeting where, you know, students can come and, you know, say what they want to do about it, vote on things. And we've provided that around Palestine and the genocide in Gaza. And it's been a real shame that now basically the Guild have acted to ban clubs supporting things that aren't their own clubs. So, you know, now like there's real restrictions on, as a socialist club, what we can do to support people who want to be part of the Students of Palestine collective and to promote that. So I think that is a really clear example, to be honest.
David?
Yeah, I was looking at the reading through the whole strategic draft, and a big motivator for me to get involved in the guild was what about affordable and healthy food options. I'm just wondering whether there's room either in Pillar B or Pillar C or any of those about um, being able to add a strategic performance measure that tracks a KPI of the percentage of menu items that meet Australian dietary guidelines or something similar like that. Like whether or not it's say, hey, we want to have like 60% of them or 50% of them be meet a certain threshold or something like that, just because I think having healthy food on campus is really important.
Thanks, David. Zach or Vernon, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, we can consider that. Absolutely.
Thanks, Dylan.
Yeah.
Sorry, Vernon?
Yeah, I guess my only response and caveat to that is having a clear standard that is easy to administer, hear, measure, and report on. We've got many lines of food options, and just that it works out from a resource point of view. But we support the notion, and we support I support the proposition of the benefit of that. Just the logistics we'd have to work through.
Thanks. Ella?
I just do want to expand on what Amita brought up, because one of the objectives in Pillar A is that you will champion diverse student representation.
I'll just stop you for a moment and ask you how you have the strategic plan, because it is marked as confidential within the agenda.
Oh, not sure.
Okay.
But also, like, you guys are talking about grassroots activism. And for us, we do actually really think that grassroots activism is really important on campus, is really important to be promoted by the Guild. And to be honest, like, the Guild has restricted like grassroots organising campaigns from students because they say that it has to be through all the official clubs. There can be no way that, you know, random collectives of students can, you know, start to form campaigns around issues they care about. What if there were massive cuts to education?
support a campaign against those cuts, and some students wanted to organise a campaign around it. It's quite difficult to do that kind of stuff. Like the Guild does not support Students for Palestine doing events. Well, it's hard for a collective of students who support Palestine to do stuff and to book rooms if the Guild doesn't support it and back it up. That is actually problematic. What if there was a collective of students on campus who wanted to support students, who wanted to support students, wanted to support staff on strike? You know, they probably will go on strike over the next few months. What if there are an autonomous collective of students who wanted to support staff on strikes and thought the Guild wasn't doing an adequate enough job of promoting and supporting the staff on strike? What if the students wanted to have a protest on campus of student solidarity with staff? You know, I think there's difficult ways because you can't just set up a club for every campaign that happens. You actually just can't. Like, you can't go through the official, you know, it takes a long time to get a club established. What if, like, spontaneously some students are angry about an issue related to education cuts or related to staff on strike, want to show solidarity? How can they organise autonomously as students if they're not in the Guild, if they're not already in the Guild? And what if the Guild, because you guys politically oppose Socialist Alternative, so that does restrict students who are from different political perspectives of you guys. And you know, you have hostility to Socialist Alternative, which is partly why you haven't supported Students for Palestine initiatives, because we are part of that, and why you'd probably be hostile to us if we did organise a campaign around another issue on campus. And that is problematic because the Guild is currently controlled by Illuminate, which means that, you know, which means, no, it's not funny, which actually does mean there's restrictions on autonomous groups of students wanting to do campaigns around things, organise a protest without facing possible repercussions from the university. Because if you organise a protest on campus that hasn't got Guild approval or hasn't got Guild backing or isn't legitimate in some way, the university can then repress those students for breaking laws, breaking bylaws, and that puts students at risk. If some students were randomly angry about the fact that Curtin is sponsoring a Submarine Institute of Australia conference, if that happened, which Curtin is sponsoring a Submarine Institute of Australia conference, which will be promoting AUKUS, promoting nuclear weapons, promoting nuclear submarines, and they wanted to say, we want to oppose Curtin sponsoring this thing. We want to run a campaign against this because we oppose our university having ties to weapons companies. We oppose our university also you know, being complicit in the genocide of Palestine by having ties to these weapons companies. It's hard for students to organise that kind of stuff. Can you admit that, Dylan? Because I think it is. And I think, you know, the Guild should find ways to foster that stuff. If, you know, you guys have a perspective of supporting activism, you guys have a perspective of being left-wing, you guys have a perspective of, you know, supporting Palestine, standing with staff. You know, we want to actively be part of a campaign that stands with staff if they're on strike. And probably, like, we want to do a bit more than what the Guild does. But, like, there needs to be a way to facilitate that without us or the Socialist Alternative Club facing repercussions because of that. Because we want to actually, you know, organise activism on campus. And as Emily and Pamita just said, there was a successful example of activism on campus. You guys always say, oh, you guys just yell, you don't get anything done. It actually matters to protest in this world. That's how all of society has changed. And you would know that, Dylan, if you knew anything about history, or even the Labor Party for that matter. And also, you know, this protest at ANU, 400 people, you know, protested against the cuts at ANU because there was a grassroots student-led campaign that was fighting around it and that was doing stuff that had a perspective of saying we want to mobilise students, we're going to organise a protest. When has the Guild here organised a protest? When have you guys ever even thought about organising a protest? What about the housing campaign that you guys are running? It's a good campaign. I'm really glad you're running it. There could be a lot more done, though, for it. There could be a protest organised. There could be campaign collectives to get students to come along and say what they think should happen about their campaign, rather than just you guys who, you know, like doing stuff in your offices. Like, I don't know. I think there needs to be a bit of a change of perspective. That's what our argument is. That's what our mandate, the Guild, is, Dylan. We're not trying to play electioneering here. We actually have a perspective. We care about these things. We want more to happen. We want to work with you guys, but you guys don't want to work with us. We want to work with you. We want to try to do more. I've sent you emails. You don't respond to them. Come on, Dylan. Like, we're coming here in good faith. We have elected representatives on this institution. We actually wanted to do something. We have a perspective. Protests can actually make things happen if you actually try to make them happen, you know? So that's what we're here trying to say. And that's our comment about the strategic plan, because there's like, well, that's what Hamida and Emily are trying to promote about it. So like, you know, about what like they think. That's why we're commenting on the strategic plan. And like, it's actually important for us to have a perspective on that.
Thanks, Ella. I'll throw to Dylan. Do you want to respond to that?
Oh, look, I mean, I love the passion. all I can say is that the Guild agrees with the notion of grassroots organising, but we don't agree with the notion of groups of people being shouted over. We met with the NTEU this week. We've got a barbecue with them tomorrow that's directly going to support the Strike Fund. So looking forward to seeing. I'm looking forward to seeing you there, Ella, and buying a
Dylan
sausage.
finish.
I'm looking forward to seeing you there to buy a sausage and to donate to that important cause. We believe that when it comes to Palestinian activism on campus, that the voices of Palestinian people need to come first. That's something that we believe in. We believe that that can be done and that can be facilitated. And if you have a different perspective, that's fine. But that will be the perspective that we push forward and that we continue to implement through the Guild. Okay, I respect you here, and I think a lot of the points raised are actually quite valid. And I think that we can go back and do it. And that's why we brought it here for consultation. We're not forcing this through. It's here for genuine consultation. Yeah, no. Hey. I sat here and listened to you, and you raised your voice at me. Heaven forbid I get a little bit passionate here. I'm very passionate about this Guild. I'm very passionate about the direction we're heading in. I respect your passion. I hope that you respect mine. Ultimately, what we're going to do here is we're not here to represent ourselves. We're here to represent the interests of the students of this university. This body has an obligation to sit down and think not about what's just right for the students today, not about what's right for Illuminate or what's right for Socialist Alternative, what's right for the Labor Party, what's right for the Liberals. I'm sorry that Coburn can't make it. Can you not interrupt me?
At this point, I'll issue a warning for interruption one more and you're out.
We've got an obligation here to make decisions that are in the best interests of students of the university today, but also the future members of the Guild as well. Now, I think that the Guild should be a fighting force. I've heard your points on a lot of things. I'm very happy to sit down and discuss them with you. I think there's a lot more nuance than what we can provide in a formal setting like this. So that's an open invitation. I'm sorry for not replying to your email. We had O-Day this week and a bunch of other things that have kept me rather busy. We're very much supportive of supporting the action on the conference that Curtin's sponsoring. Curtin shouldn't be sponsoring events like that. We're happy to work together. I think there needs to be mutual respect. I think the combative nature is not going to be helpful. If we're pushing for the same things, there can at least be a level of decency that we're coming at it and coming at wanting to achieve these things together. That attitude's not being fostered at the moment. So once again, shout out to Coburn. And we need to come in and we need to make sure that we're working together in a collaborative way. The Guild's going to stand with staff if they decide to go on strike. That's a given under this Guild. We're going to continue to support grassroots organising, but we're not going to support groups of students on this campus being shouted over. We're not going to support groups of students on campus being told what they can and can't do. We're going to support genuine self-determination. It's actually a really good point that you've all spoken about this, because I don't think self-determination is mentioned in here. And I think we probably need to put it in there as a core part of our principles as well. So I think that's something worthwhile noting, that when we're making these decisions and we're making decisions on behalf of people, the Guild's not going to come in here and make a decision about what the staff should do, because they can do that through their elected union and we're going to support them. The Guild's not going to make a decision on what the Palestinian students at this university should do. We're going to sit down and we're going to support them to do that. We're not going to support other groups of people shouting over them and telling them how they can and can't run a campaign. That's going to be what happens. That's going to be what happens as long as I'm here and as long as we're here and we have passionate people involved in this council, because that's what we believe in. So that's my response to that. I think there's been a lot of genuinely really decent feedback, and I'm very happy to work through, because I think that some of these language can be improved. That's why we brought it here in good faith. I don't know why we need to be getting so angry about what's a consultation draft. We can make some changes. That's what's here for.
All right. You have to wait for the call. You have to wait for the call. We'll go to Hamida.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the tone was pretty fine. And like, yeah, people should be able to speak passionately, and that's not
I need to wait for the
yeah,
call.
I support
Hamida to finish.
I support passionate points. You should be able to as well, Dylan. So yeah, I think well, I would like to actually like hear examples of students shouting over people or something, or and also what they should and shouldn't do. Yeah, I'd like to hear what that actually is about. But that's like just a side point. And I think it sounds great that the guild is willing to support the kind of like protest against the conference that the Curtin is sponsoring. Um, and I actually wanted to raise this in general business, but it seems like it's relevant right now. I was gonna, if that's okay, I wanted to just ask right now if like the guild would be able to back that whole like anti-military campaign, and also like help us book rooms for it as well, like for the campaign. Just because it's kind of difficult to try to book somewhere without having a club for Students for Palestine. Um, yeah, and I think like just generally though, like the guild not affiliating Students of Palestine actually does limit Palestinian students as well as anyone that wants to protest against the genocide that's been going on. And like, you know, people should be able to care about issues, whether they're wherever they're from, and being against something isn't speaking over anyone. Like, that is actually limiting the very activism that you're saying you support. Like, you're saying you support like grassroots activism, you're left wing. The Curtin Guild is like the most pro Palestine guild student union. But then, like, not affiliating Students of Palestine or like really limiting all of these things is limiting that very like activism. So yeah, I think students should be able to protest for Palestine, and Students of Palestine had Palestinian students as a part of it as well. So while you're saying you want to support that, the guild actually not affiliating the club has limited that.
Thanks, Amita. The supporting the campaign will go to general business, but I'll just check now. Are you happy to support a circular through Reps Board for that, Ben?
Yes, I am.
So if you can send that to Ben like today, and to Nora as well, we can support a circular. I think, yeah, if it's support, I think it has to go through, just check with Dylan, but send all the stuff through to Secretary and Education VP. Yeah, and any other details for logistics and stuff, send it through to Ben and Nor, and we'll get that sorted as soon as we can. Right, and we'll go back to, so the topic we're actually discussing is the strategic plan. So are there any more questions or comments on the strategic plan, feedback on it, what needs to be changed that hasn't already been covered? No?
Not hasn't been covered, so I was taking notes. So Emily and Hamida, can anyone hear me? Section D to have more of a defend free speech type of thing. Dylan, you mentioned adding self-determination somewhere in the strategic plan. Something about how we support campaigns and student initiatives. Okay, this kind of stuff. Okay.
That's true, yeah. Healthy food. Okay. Thanks, David. All right. Is there anything else that hasn't been covered already? Okay. Settle down. If there's nothing else that's direct feedback on the strategic plan, then we'll go back to the motion is that the Guild Council discusses and notes the Curtin Student Guild 2026 to 2029 strategic plan consultation draft. This is moved by Dylan and seconded by Nor. All those in favour supporting what we've discussed today? Yep, that is carried. Item 6.3 is the commercial strategy phase 1. We have a motion that the Guild Council notes and supports the implementation of the commercial strategy plan phase 1. This is moved by Dylan and seconded by Nor. Dylan, do you want to kick us off?
to move this conversation be had in camera.
Okay, a seconder, Ben. All those in favour of this moving in camera, that is carried. So for those in the gallery, you'll have to leave the chamber while we discuss this in camera due to its confidential nature, and we'll invite you back in once we move out of camera. And then Max, can you put the in-camera slide up? Cool. And I'll note, can you write down that we moved in camera at 7:28? There's a button on the side. It's just this one, yeah. Sign. There's just a button on the side next to the door to get out. Yeah. The commercial plan, because it's commercial in confidence. So. Do we want to do the 6.4 stuff at the same time, or? Yeah. Yeah. Because that's got, we will touch on 6.4 as well. Otherwise, we have to come out of camera and go back in again. Just part of it. The actual motion and the voting has to happen out of camera anyway. So we'll still vote on 6.3 and 6.4 out of camera. Just, we're going to be, there's two things to address in 6.3 and 6.4 that has to be confidential to council. All right, so, and it's a little bit less formal while we're in camera, because, oh yeah, stop recording, Nor. Thank you. All right, we're confirmed we're not streaming anymore. Cool, excellent. All right, Dylan, kick us off.
Gosh, I tell you what,
The tab closed 48 minutes ago. Yeah. We could move a motion right now. All right, we are out of camera at 7:48 p.m. We have the motion that the Guild Council notes and supports the implementation of the Commercial Strategy Plan Phase 1. This was moved by Dylan and seconded by Noor. Can I get hands in favour? That is carried. Item 6.4 is approval of lease variation, Clubs Hub Stage 1. We have a motion that the Guild Council approves the deed of variation, Guild Precinct, addition of Clubs Hub, rooms 101 and 112, building 106A with Curtin University. This is moved by Dylan and seconded by Noor. Dylan, take us away.
Yes, so the Guild has a peppercorn lease with the university over our main precinct. This includes the Guild office, Gmart, the tavern, Clubs HQ, and Cafe Central, among other things. This essentially is a variation to that lease to now incorporate Clubs Hub Stage 1 into there, which is a new space for student clubs and societies to book and utilise. It's been operated by the Guild for a while. This is just formalising the changeover of the lease. Essentially, all this really changes is that, like, we're not they're not charging us rent on this area, but things like different obligations under maintenance and paying for the power and that kind of stuff will come back to us in a different way. But yeah, that's basically this area. Stage 2 is under construction now. Once that's completed, that will move under, and that will be a separate motion that we'll have to put up before the deed is signed.
Thanks, Dylan. Noor, seconded, nothing to add. Are there any comments from anyone on council? Ben?
I was just looking for clarification on building 106C, where it mentions the tab, but it also mentions food outlets. I'm assuming George's is considered in that.
Yes,
it's not
George's is part of 106C and is actually the Guild's tenant, one and only tenant.
Yep.
And they pay us rent and it hasn't gone up in many years. More?
Maybe, I'm not sure, Vernon, you would know, but do you have any kind of timeline on phase 2? Yeah.
Not officially, but meeting with them recently, the project manager recently, about the commencement of it, is they're expecting phase 2 to end at the end of August. But yeah, again, that's not official. That's just anecdotal.
Thanks. Anyone else for the lease? No? All right. So the motion is that the Guild Council approves the deed of variation, Guild Precinct, addition of Clubs Hub, rooms 101 and 112, building 106A with Curtin University, moved by Dylan and seconded by Noor. All those in favour? That is carried. 6.5. Exciting. Budget policy and expenditure and assets policy. This one was submitted by me. Thank you. So I'll give the overview because I want to. Basically, every year, the Finance and Risk Committee reviews the budget policy and the expenditure and assets policy. We made some minor changes to clarify the role of the secretary in reallocating budget. But other than that, there weren't any other changes. So is there any discussion on this? Nope. All right. The motion is that the Guild Council notes and supports the... No, it's not. That's what it says on my agenda. But okay. The motion is that upon the recommendation... that the Guild Council, upon the recommendation of the Finance and Risk Committee, approves the revised budget policy and the revised expenditure and assets policy. Those moved by Dylan and seconded by Noor. All those in favour? That is carried. Item 6.6, exciting, ethnocultural officer. I'm not going to read that out. I'll read it out. The motion is that the Guild Council approve a proposal to amend the Student Guild Council Regulations 2018 and the Student Guild Bylaws 2022 for the following purposes. Establish an officer for ethnocultural officer or similar. Clarify the eligibility of officers. Spelling, grammatical and other administrative corrections. And addressing matters, if any, recommended from legal advice the Guild has received or other areas that have caused issues for Council. The Guild Council also authorises the amendment of other regulations where required for related purposes. This is moved by Noor and seconded by Razan. Noor, would you like to speak to this?
Yes. So as we know, we established the Ethnocultural Collective earlier in the year in our reps board. This motion just is to update the Guild Council regulations and the bylaws to create the ethnocultural role, another equity officer, to better represent our culturally and linguistically diverse students, and also just to tidy up some outdated clauses and admin errors or anything like that. This is important to strengthen student representation and reduce pressures in current portfolios like the BPSW, and reflect our commitment to inclusion and equity. And just for context, if passed, it will proceed to the legal committee, and if passed there, will return to the next immediate Guild Council. So hopefully we'll see it, if passed, at August to officially get the ball rolling. Yeah.
All right. And Razan is seconded. Do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, Nord basically spoke to most of it. I think especially that point of just having someone that can just take on this portfolio as basically their role in the guild, rather than, I feel like a lot of things I've been doing have or could have, like if we had an ethnocultural officer, they would have been doing these things. And so yeah, I think definitely to have an officer that can dedicate more time.
Thanks. And members, Noor, you want to go? Yeah.
I'm just going to say it's a really long time coming, and I'm very happy that it's finally here.
All right, we'll open up to members. Anyone with comments or questions? Adia?
I just had a question if you guys could expand on what you mean by like or similar to the ethnocultural officer.
Just naming, if we wanted to, if it would have to have a different official name or anything like that.
But everything else would stay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Hamida?
I just wanted to ask, like, what is the main like difference to the regulations from the 2018 to 2022 bylaws? And then like specifically the fourth way, I just wasn't sure what it means by legal advice the guild has received or other areas that have caused issues with the council. Like what kind of issues?
It would just be if any. So just in case something was to come up and we are already in the process of like amending the regulations and the bylaws, it's easier to do it when we've got approval from council to make those edits and then bring it back to council to final approval. And what point was it that didn't make sense?
The difference between regulations and bylaws, I think it is.
You go. I know you want to.
So, because I love regulations and bylaws. So the Guild Statute book is made up of around 14 different documents. It's the Curtin Guilds. It's actually the Curtin University Act, the Curtin Student Guild Statute number 4, the Curtin Student Guild Rules, or 5 sets of regulations and 2 sets of bylaws, and they rank in that order. So the Act comes first, and so on. So the bylaws are actually made pursuant to the regulations and sit beneath it. The regulations are made pursuant to the rules in the statute, and the rules in the statute are made pursuant to the Act. So The difference is between regulations and bylaws is that regulations require approval from University Council to be changed and bylaws only require approval from Guild Council to change. And so certain things sit within the regulations because they need university approval to be changed, and certain things sit within the bylaws because they don't need university approval to be changed. Does that kind of answer that? It's a what was the question then?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. I just want,
Can I say something?
I love this.
Can I say something?
All right. What was anyone else? No.
I was just going to say, if we did make any changes, nothing would be taken to Uni Council or approved. Like, that's why it's coming back to the next one. So any changes, you guys will see it.
Anyone else? All right. We'll move on. The motion is that the Guild Council approve a proposal to amend the Student Guild Council Regulations 2018 and the Student Guild Bylaws 2022 for the following purposes. Establish an officer for ethnocultural officer or similar, clarify the eligibility for officers, spelling, grammatical and other administrative corrections, addressing matters, if any, recommended by legal advice the Guild has received or other areas that have caused issues from Council. The Guild Council also authorises the amendment of other regulations where required for related purposes. This is moved by Noor and seconded by Razan. Can I see hands in favour? That is carried. All right. Item 6.7 is a discussion only item. And it's to discuss and provide feedback on the election format for 2025. Who wants, Dylan, is this going to be you or is it going to be Vernon or Vernon?
Yeah, I mean, nothing largely has changed. The WA Electoral Commission has appointed a returning officer. It will be a different returning officer. Those details are provided. Well, not a lot of contact details there, but the email will be the same. We've got to confirm the phone number before this goes out. Generally, this is just any feedback people want to provide. And it also has the returning officer's report in there. So just a general discussion if there's anything going in. Given obviously the conflicts that everyone on this council has, having obviously an interest in the guild election, in large part, that relationship is managed at arm's length of elected representatives, and Vernon is sort of working on behalf of the guild in that area. We've signed, as per usual, a memorandum of understanding with the university, and that relates to authorisation for posters, that kind of stuff. It's the same rules as last year, I believe, Vernon, unless you know anything to the contrary.
The MOU is the same as last year, and meeting with the uni that's now signed it, we'll be working together with them, Safer Communities and the returning officer to ensure that the process goes through and is administered in line with those guidelines and expectations. So, yeah.
Thanks. Emily?
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify. Sorry, I know you said it's the same as last year, but it's literally like copy and paste. There's not a single difference in the MOU, but also just generally in kind of the like election format and like the elections and what's acceptable and like the time. Like there's not like a single change kind of thing, or because I think if there is, I think it would be good for them to kind of be outlined.
The only changes I'm aware of is a potential room for where ballots might be taken due to space. Other than that, and obviously amending the dates so they reflect the same day in the week. But I'm not aware, my first election, but I'm not aware of any.
The opening and late polling days, we moved the late opening to the Wednesday so that we don't have late followed by early morning.
Right.
Because, you know, so that we don't have, so we're not, so that the polling place isn't open till 6 on the Monday and then opens at 8 on the Tuesday. It opens at 8 on the Tuesday and then is open till 6 on the Wednesday, so that you've got still got the break in between and time for enough sleep. I think, is there any, I think that was it. This is about the election, yeah?
Yes.
All right, can you use your microphone? Yeah.
Motion of notice for the Curtin.
Sorry, it's still not on.
Motion of notice for the Curtin University Student Guild Council and/or Curtin University Student Guild Representation Board. The motion that the Curtin Student Guild gets it done. That is, changes to the law so that there are one or two uni-ready reps on either or both of the Curtin Student Guild Representation Board and/or the Curtin Student Guild Council.
Thanks for that, Julia. I'll just note that that the eligibility to run as a guild officer is not contained within any rules that we can change. It's actually restricted to being an award course in rules set by the university. Is eligibility for being an officer. I believe it's in statute number 4 or the guild rules. So it's not actually something that we can change. Only the university council can change it. I suggest you direct your inquiries there. Thanks. David?
Yeah, I was just noticing on the packet that there were 5 recommendations from the WAEC about the 2024 election and the 2025. As you said, there were no changes. Does that mean we are refusing all 5 of the recommendations and not looking to implement any of them?
Scroll a long way to find those recommendations. Yeah. So I think Vernon mentioned a place for ballots to be counted. So that is one of the recommendations. So it is number 5 for Curtin to host. That's what they mean, is have a room on campus instead of going back to the WAC office, which is quite cramped. I think, did you have anything on postal vote deadlines? Because they're quite strictly outlined in our regulations. So.
Sorry, yeah, no, nothing specific on postal vote deadlines.
And then number 4 seems like a recommendation back to the WAC itself on staffing. And 1, it's up to the returning officer whether they want to hold an information session. The only other one was number 2 that we really have any direct control over.
And I think there is an intention to have a information session available, but that's based, again, we'll sit with the returning officer, but indications are there is an interest to have that.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyone else? No? All right. So that brings us to, yep, go for it, Emily.
The bit that was like talking about banning posters, is that like what's up with that?
My understanding is there is no banning of posters, but there'll be strict enforcement of where you can place them. There's the expectation of respecting of the university property. I know the university raised with me their discontent with the way in which posters were placed on the library. I think particularly the windows and the damages caused to that. And so we will be mindful of that and apply the rules with respect to that. But no, my posters are not banned as part of the election process. I don't know if it's a change or whether you were not allowed to anyway, but there are certain areas where we'll need to respect, and at that information session, I'll encourage them to make it really clear on where posters can be placed. So, yeah.
Dylan?
I think it's. I don't think we've ever been able to stick. I think like it's particularly like on the windows is this, and then it's how the posters are affixed. There's particular tapes that sort of don't leave as much of an impact. But where you can put posters hasn't changed. I know last year when this came before council, there was some discussion on that recommendation too. I think that the last year's returning officer is quite out of line on this recommendation. I think particularly the line here saying that posters do not fit with any group's environmental policies is stepping over the mark for what should be an impartial electoral operation. I know the WAC is under a lot of pressure at the moment, so we'll see what this year's returning officer recommends. But I don't think that commenting on the policies of tickets is something that should be fueling recommendations put forward by an independent and supposedly impartial returning officer.
The only other thing I'll add as well is counting on election night needs to wrap up earlier than I think it was like 9:30, 10. Like, we've got places to be. We've been out there all day for scrutineers. Yeah.
Happy to,
drinks to drink.
happy to support that and welcome any advice on how we resource and make sure that that happens. Yep.
Thanks. Anyone else? All right, cool. Then we will move on to item 7. 7 point. There are 2 sets of minutes, reps board from June and finance and risk from May. Any comments on those? No. All right. The motion is that the Guild Council notes the minutes of committees on block. Can I please get a mover? Nor. A seconder, Max. All those in favour? That is carried. We move on to general business. Now, I'll note that there's a slight change to how general business is going to work. We've added 8.1 ideas and suggestions, and part of the reason for this is to try and limit how many, kind of more operational motions we get, so you can directly make suggestions to Dylan and Vernon. Yeah. So give feedback on anything you've seen that the Guild's doing or suggestions on any of the Guild's operations. So I'll open it up to members. Yes, Emily?
Really know the appropriate time to raise it, but an idea, I guess, I have, is I think there should be like a motion like that we pass tonight, I guess, in solidarity with Marine Faruqi. Like, can I speak to that? I don't know if this is the appropriate time. Is that fine?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, well, I think, like on Tuesday, I think it was, Parliament went back, and yeah, it was the same day that a 13-year-old Abdul Maid starved to death in Gaza. So it's in a time where the situation in Gaza is just worse than it's ever been, is what a lot of people in Gaza are saying at the moment, which is a pretty terrible thing when the past couple, nearly 2 years have been how they are. But in that kind of reality where people are starving to death in Gaza, and the report that recently came out saying that Australia is supplying weapons to Israel, and Penny Wong signing on to a statement saying, "Oh, starvation's bad," while continuing the weapons supply. Marine Faruqi held a sign. I'm not sure if people saw when Parliament went back. Saying Gaza's starving, words won't feed them, sanction Israel. And instead of sanctioning Israel, the Labour Party sanctioned her. They censored her for having a sign, which I think is, pretty appalling that, the Labour Party only have words for war criminals, only have words for starvation and genocide and apartheid, but have actions only for the left and only for people that are oppositional to these crimes. I think that, given this being a student union, and it happening recently, I haven't put forward a motion prior, but I think it's something that is important for us to kind of pass now, given, all the crackdown on her.
Are you happy?
We can do it now. Yeah, but it's not just that. We can do it now. Do you want to do it now? No?
Are you happy to write a motion and we circle it to reps with your other motion that you'll be sending me, our representation board? Your one for, yeah, that Hamida will send me.
I think we should do it now. I think there's, even Mitch is
Type it up?
open to it. Yeah, I can send it around to everyone now if that's easier.
Is it
Well,
already written?
Yeah. Do you want
Can
me
you send it to my secretary email?
Yep, I'll send that to you now.
All right. And then we'll also you'll need to move to suspend Standing Order 12, Part 4, and then Hamida can second that if you want as well. And then we vote on that so that a motion not on the agenda can be considered.
Yep, I'll second.
So can you, so
Yeah.
you want, so you have to say you want to move a procedural motion that the Guild Council suspend Standing Order 12, Part 4, to consider an item of business not on the agenda.
Yeah, move to procedural suspend 12.4.
All right.
Yeah, do that.
Thanks. And yeah, I just know that. I do know that off the top of my head, unfortunately. So, Hamida, do you want to? Yeah.
I'll second.
Cool. So Hamida is seconding that. Something in my email now. Yes.
Yeah.
So all those in favour of suspending Standing Order 12, Part 4, that is carried.
And you just email me and CC Mitch.
Yeah. Mine's m.craig@guild.curtin.edu.au.
And everyone else, if you want to look at your emails, because you'll get it soon. I'll have that open.
Yeah.
My question is this. What will you do about what I'm going to explain about right now?
Sorry, Juliet. We're actually considering a motion right now, so we'll have to wait until that motion is concluded. I'll just like this. Yes. No, we're not in intermission. We're just Nor's just circulating the motion to all of Guild Council.
Okay, it should be sent.
All right. So the motion is for the Curtin Student Guild to stand in solidarity with Marine Faruqi against the censoring in Parliament by Penny Wong about her sign, Gaza is starving. Words won't feed them. Sanction Israel now. The Labour Party should sanction Israel and its genocide, not those that oppose it. This is moved by Emily and seconded by Hamida. Yep. Would you like to speak to the motion, Emily?
Well, I guess I kind of spoke before, but yeah, I think the situation in Gaza, like I said, is yeah, beyond kind of devastating. And you know, yeah, the situation where a couple of weeks ago the first person to starve to die of starvation, and you know, cut to today where just like over the past week, just like tens of people have died of starvation because of the blockade of food, of humanitarian aid, anything into the Gaza Strip. And yeah, there's, you know, UN kind of trucks that are overflowing with food sitting at the border, but Israel refuses to let them in. And I think given that, it is, you know, just pathetic that what Penny Wong has to say is, you know, that starvation is bad. I think if, you know, she thinks starvation is bad, then the Australian government should not support the, you know, apartheid state of Israel that is doing the starvation, should cut ties to Israel, should stop sending them military weapons, should do a two-way arms embargo, should sanction not just you know, far-right extremists, but the entire state. And yeah, should you know, do as much as this country can to you know, make Israel a pariah state. Yeah, so I think that is kind of what it would look like if Penny Wong thought starvation was bad. And you know, Marine Faruqi and the Greens have been the only people really in Parliament that have been good on this question, that have actually had a backbone and been principled on the genocide in Gaza. And I think, yeah, for her to actually stand up and say something and be censored for actually not saying a single word, just holding up a sign, she gets censored for. It shows that the Labour Party can act, they can sanction people, but they only choose to do it to anti-war activists, to people that oppose barbarity in the world, not the ones that dish it out. So I think, yeah, it's really important we oppose this and say that, yeah, like we stand with activists, we stand with people that oppose genocide, and that the Australian Labor Party are complicit in these crimes.
Seconder, Hamida, do you want to speak before we go to Sophia?
Yeah, just a short point that you know, the last I checked, 113 people just starved to death in the past 24 hours in Gaza. And words are not going to feed them. Like, we need action, and the Australian government can take action. So yeah, I think
Thank you. Adia?
I just wanted to mention that the spelling of her last name is wrong. It's Faruqi, but that's it.
We can fix that for the minutes. It's fine. Hey, Razan?
I'd just like to propose an amendment. I think it's just important to note that Marine's actions weren't sort of just out of the blue. They were part of the Canberra Convergence. The Canberra Convergence calls for a. I do agree in criticizing Labor, but I think it's the whole government. Like, I think it was 24 senators or something from Labor, the rest were Liberal. You've got the coalition. I believe they all deserve the same criticism. Obviously, Labor Party is in government, so I understand that. But for that reason, I would want that context to be included. I would want, there were only 3 politicians that left the government, so including Marine. They walked outside and spoke at the convergence after Marine did what was called like a protest. And those were Marine Faruqi, David Shoebridge, and Ed Husick as well. I would want a commendation. I think more politicians need to stand up against the government in this sense. So basically the amendment I wanted to propose is that the Labour Party, I agree, I agree the Labour Party, but that the government, if you want to know, including the Labour Party, but the government should sanction Israel and its genocide, not those that oppose it, and that the Guild commends the politicians that left to join the Canberra Convergence for Gaza Outside, including Marine Faruqi, Ed Husick, and David Shoebridge.
Figure. You got it? Just, yep, Emily?
Yeah, I'm amenable to the convergence on Canberra. I think that's a good addition and is good context. I'm not really amenable really to the like exclusion of the word Labor. Like it was Penny Wong who raised it, and I think it's kind of a given. We're against the coalition, and I think we can say we're against the government, but I do think that the word Labor needs to be in there, given that they're the ones that actually hold majority and actually have the power to cut ties. And I think that, to be honest, it does like let them off softly if we're just saying we're against the government, but not actually calling out the people who are in the government. So yeah, like yeah, I think it's fine to say we're against the government, but
So if we say the government, including the Labor Party,
yeah, they are the government. So it's like you could.
so so politicians
I think
in
it
the
is a.
government, including all Labor.
I think it is. I think it is like quite a consideration of like a big watering down of the actual essence of the motion, which is to say that of course we're against like the freaks like Susan Lee and the government, but I think that it's to say that people that pretend that they care about Palestinians, like Penny Wong, who moved to sanction, they're the actual kind of people that hold the power in the government, and I think yeah, it is kind of like a dilution of the motion to just say we're against people that are sanctioned, or including Labor, when it's like Labor are the force that have moved this, are the force that will get that have got the numbers. Like you know, if the Labor Party didn't push for this, didn't vote this up, it wouldn't get up. Like there's a few people around them that vote for them. The Liberals barely have any fucking seats. Like, come on, you know.
And Razan?
It's just more about being in line with the national call. So that's it. So I agree, Labour, but the convergence is calling on for the government as an entirety, all its politicians, including independents, including Labour. Obviously, I understand the nuances of it, but it's more about being aligned with the core of the convergence as well.
I think that just to respond, like a lot of the convergence, I think yeah, called out the Labor Party because they are the ones in government, and I think Marine Faruqi was right, and not some yeah, was kind of yeah part of that convergence obviously, and her statement was in response to what Penny Wong said when she signed onto that statement. It wasn't in response to the government as a whole. It was the Labor Party because she recognised that the actual kind of political target of protest, like the convergence did, the target is actually was the Labor Party. So yeah, I just think that like for people who converged on Canberra, a large part of them saw their political target as the going back of the government that's dominated by the Labor Party that have 94 or whatever seats out of like 140 or whatever the fuck you guys probably know. But like so I just think like come on, like the majority of the government is the Labor Party. They're the ones that are pushing for this. They're the ones Marine Faruqi and a bunch of people were protesting to say that you guys say you care about Palestinians, you clearly don't. Like people in the Liberal Party don't even pretend they care about Palestinians. So it's not really like it's not like it's the whole government. It's like you know, it's the people that make up the government that are the ones that are saying we're against starvation. It's calling out their hypocrisy and saying, you know, don't the Labor Party, like if you care about starvation, do something about it. Like so yeah, I just think that it is a moderation of the motion, to be honest.
David?
Razan, you can just nod or shake your head. Are you planning to change the wording of your amendment based on what you've heard?
So I'm adding the bit about the commendation, but I am adding the government and the Labor Party.
Can I procedurally move that the question be put?
We don't have a question to be put yet. So procedurally, the amendment must be circular. Can I have quiet? Dylan? Shh. So procedurally, the amendment must be circulated in writing. Then the amendment requires a seconder. Then we vote on whether the amendment is amenable to the Guild Council. and then we return to vote on the motion, depending on whether the amendment passes or not. We vote on either the amended or the original motion, depending on whether the amendment passes. There's a flow chart. Please do not amend the amendment because it gets really, really complicated. So we vote on whether we accept the amendment to the motion, and then we vote on the motion depending on whether it is amended or not amended. So unless the amendment is amenable to the mover.
Part of it is, that's what I'm saying. The convergence on camera bit, I'm saying I'm amenable to. We don't have to vote on it.
Okay. So take it to Emily. If you're amenable to the changes.
But what about sections? That's part of it. Can I have a look?
Yeah. If it's not amenable, then we vote on the amendment. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It is easier if we don't have to vote on the amendment and it's amenable to the mover.
That just be minuted then.
I mean, I'm sure it will be because Marianne does the minutes based on the recording. So. Yeah, why not? If it makes things move faster, I'm so hungry.
There's still some left.
Yeah, it's cold though.
Are you saying it's half is not there? Yeah, that's good.
Okay, it's been circulated. Please check your emails.
We've got a motion that's amenable. Excellent. All right. I know. All right. Didn't fix the spelling, but okay. All right, we have a new motion. The motion is that the Guild Council stand in solidarity with Marine Faruqi against the censor in Parliament by Penny Wong about her sign. Gaza is starving. Words won't feed them. Sanction Israel now. The Labour Party should sanction Israel and its genocide, not those who... Oh, wait, no, sorry, that's the wrong one. That's the wrong... It came through at 8:31. Oh, no, sorry. It's come through as two different emails. Okay. All right. Got it now. The motion is that the Guild Council stand in solidarity with Miriam Faruqi against the censor initiated by Penny Wong in Parliament after her sign, Gaza is starving. Words won't feed them. Sanction Israel now was displayed. The Labour Party, including the government, should sanction Israel and its genocide, not those who oppose it. The Guild commends the politicians who left to join the convergence on camera for Gaza outside, including Miriam Faruqi, Ed Husick, and David Shoebridge. This is moved by Emily and seconded by Hamida. Is there any further discussion on this motion before we go to a vote? All right, all those in favour? I can't actually vote, but that is carried. Unanimously, I might add. All right. Is there any other general business?
Yes. My question is this: what are you going to do about what I'm going to explain about right now? I want my boyfriend back on this campus. He has never had any chance to plead not guilty in a fair trial.
Juliet, I'm just going to interrupt you. Is this the same as last time? All right, so we've already heard this. So, Dylan, do you want to respond to Juliet based on your memory of what she said last time?
Have you, I mean, you don't need to let Guild Council know, but I'd really recommend, as was mentioned the last time you came in, to speak with Student Assist. The Guild has professional staff that can assist with these inquiries. And I would really recommend that you do that, and I'm happy to put you in contact with them if that is something that you would like to do. So we can certainly assist with that. Yeah.
Thanks, Dylan. All right, is there any other general business? All right, then I close this meeting at, sorry. Sorry, item 9, the meeting evaluation. Max, go. You had, no, I, 30 seconds, go.
30 seconds. Since the topic of my the main points of my evaluation has left the chambers, I'm gonna withdraw all my evaluations.
All right. Thanks. All right. The next meeting, and unless there are any objections, we're changing the time back to 5:30 now that Ryan's no longer on council. Will be at 5:30 on the 21st of August 2025 to be held here in council chambers. The meeting is closed at 8:34 p.m. Go in peace.